Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Talks with V. Well, not only is tonight another episode, but it is the very first episode of our new season. And this season is titled Safety. And it's a very important topic, but not only is it important, it's very special to me because I'm basing this season off of my book that I'll be releasing soon. And it's titled The Safest Place. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'm super excited about it. But this topic of safety, some people are like, well, what are we talking about with safety? Like, what's this going to be about? Like what area, right? And we tend to kind of, lean to the, physical or, safety inspections. And I guess you can look at it that way, going through your, your personal inventory of your life and doing an inspection and seeing maybe there's certain areas that you don't feel safe in or would like to improve. And so that's the kind of thing that we're talking about is the different areas of safety in our life and how we can learn or gain the tools to be safe and have those safe spaces and places in our lives, as well as creating safety within ourselves. And so I am just super overjoyed, to really dive into this season. And this evening we have a very special guest, Miss Lisa Ibekwe.
Hi, everybody.
Welcome. And Lisa is a clinical licensed social worker, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And from the Comfy Place. And so we're going to go ahead and get into all of that. But before we dive too deep into this episode, if you haven't already subscribed to this channel, V Bailey Network on YouTube, make sure that you click that button and subscribe and also share. If this episode resonates with you or you think that there's someone who can benefit from this episode, please share it. Please share on any of the platforms you are on and it'll link them back to us. Okay. So let's get into it. So Lisa, thank you again for being here this evening. I would love for you to introduce yourself so that people know who you are. Because this is your first time with us, and I'm super happy to have you. But let's go ahead and get into that of who are you, your background. I'm sure we all would like to know more of who's this woman talking to us.
Definitely. So hello, everybody. First, thank you, Miss Bailey, for having me on your show. For everyone out there, my name is Lisa Ibekwe. I am a licensed clinical social worker. I'm a child and adolescent therapist. So that means I love the kids and I sometimes like the grownups. But so right. I am the owner of the Comfy Place. We are a therapy practice physically based in Georgia, but then we serve a bunch of other states as well throughout the U.S.
Oh, nice. Well, that's awesome. Yeah, I'll have to check her out so we can see where those different locations are. Yes, especially after the episode.
Since we're talking about safety, yes. Hit us up.
Yes. Okay, and so that's you're talking about the Comfy Place. I love the name. It just sounds like the best. I'm just like, I need a nice little comfy place, a little nook. So tell us more about the Comfy Place.
Yeah, definitely. So the idea behind the Comfy Place is that we are a therapeutic space for all to heal. So really with us, we want to remove the stigma that exists behind mental health and change this narrative of like, sitting on the chair talking to like this old white man and you're like, tell me how you feel. Well, I feel like I don't want to be here. So we want to change that narrative and actually help people understand that healing is it can be fun. You know, it may hurt, it may feel good, it may be scary, but at the end of the day, healing is for all of us. We deserve it. We should get it. So our motto is to have fun, get real, and heal. We're about making therapy not just a journey, but a journey that you can laugh through, a journey you can cry through, a journey that you can feel supported through. And then for us, like at the Comfy Place, we gonna keep it real with you. Like that's one of the things that we are big on. And the reason I say that is because as I'm sure we are all facing things in life. Like when life be lifing, there are times that we're just like, I don't know. You don't want somebody that's going to sugarcoat stuff, lie to you, make you feel like it's going to be okay when we're like, but it's not. So what do I do now? So we keep it real, but we also still love on you and like support you and bring you into the Comfy Place family so that while you're healing, you know, you're not actually alone.
Yes, that's so good. And it's so important to have support. So many times you just don't have, you know, that support. Before we jump into the next question, I had a question about the Comfy Place and the type of what the clientele is that you work with.
Yeah, definitely. So we actually serve across the lifespan.
Okay.
We work with kids, you know, as young as 2, sometimes even like infants. It depends on what the relationship is like with the parent, where we may do attachment stuff. But we work with kids as young as 2 all the way through, you know, death. I know it sounds weird to say, but different therapists have different specialties and different age groups that they work with. So what we like to tell people is, you know, healing doesn't discriminate. So just please, because we may have somebody that can fit you. And if we don't, we'll help you find somebody that can.
Yes, I love that. It's like a life support team, you know, just like we are with you till the end. I love that. I do. I think about like my therapist and how great, you know, he is. And I'm just like, can we stay together forever?
Don't go nowhere.
Don't leave, you know. And so no, not like that, you know. But you know, just having that support in once you learn and grow and heal in this area, because we're constantly healing, you know, you want to know that you're going to still have that type of support. So once you go to that next level, that you have someone supporting you so that keeps on pushing you forward. So yeah, I think that that's super important. Yes. And so you were talking about that not safety, but the assistance and the support along the way. And so, as mentioned before, this season is on safety. And a lot of times people are focused on like, okay, I'm on my healing journey, or I am working on myself. And a lot of times that's, you know, centered around unresolved trauma. And as we get into the healing journey, we realize that unresolved trauma, as we unpack it, it's tracks back to our childhood. And so that's another reason I know, because you guys work with, you know, in child development as well, that I wanted to, you know, have this conversation with you. And so my question is how does the child stages of development influence their sense of safety?
Gotcha. So I think the biggest thing to understand is that as a child is developing, what is happening in life is what is teaching them what's right from wrong. It's teaching them what's safe and what's not safe. And if certain traumatic experiences occur, sometimes they may not even be traumatic per se, but they just may be incidences that occur. That changes their brain. It impacts their brain. It leaves a mark. So when this mark is left, it's either going to determine if they feel safe when they get older, maybe around certain people in certain situations, or if they tend to be, you know, more anxious, more alert, more on edge when they, you know, are interacting with people. So an example of something I'd say is like, we know that when kids are growing up, they're learning how to talk, learning how to walk. So imagine a 5-year-old child being in a home where parents are always like fighting, arguing. Now, maybe it's not to the level of violence, but just the mere fact that there's always screaming and yelling going on. In that child's mind, that environment is not safe. But because that is the only environment that they know, their brain may be registering this as this is normal. This is what safety is. Like, I have mom and dad. Yeah, they're going at it like they want to kill each other, but this is the only world that I've known. Now you take this child and put them into a classroom environment, or they get a little older and they start getting into their own family type of dynamic where there isn't as much chaos. Because they don't have that chaos, they don't feel safe. Well, guess what they start doing? Recreating the environment that they're familiar with. Because when mom and dad were arguing and fighting, I knew where I could run away and escape to feel like I was safe in my little home. But now I'm older, or I'm in class and there isn't any chaos, and this feels scary and threatening to me because I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know how to respond. I haven't been conditioned to react. So I have to recreate what I'm familiar with. So in some ways, the way that we raise our kids, what we expose them to, from the environments that they live in, the foods that we feed them, the way we pour into them, just all of these different pieces impact their development. It impacts their brain's development. And then as they get older, it impacts how they see safety, to the extent where some people, they may register unsafe people as safer than they should be, or they may not register safety at all. And they make more careless decisions. They engage in more risky behaviors. So early childhood trauma has lots of negative impacts. It's like safety and the galore. It's all inclusive, but it starts there when they're children.
Yeah, that's what, you realize you have to get back down to the foundation, like get down to the bottom of it. And that is the foundation. Is just how you came up. A lot of times people don't realize that they have these issues until they're in relationships. Yeah. And I guess, I don't know if I've thoroughly thought about why it's that, because, when you look at it, once you notice it, maybe when you're in a relationship, you do see how it did affect other areas of your life. But I guess because when you're in a relationship, you're spending so much time together with another individual. And so an intimate time as well. So you're constantly being faced with, this doesn't look like what I know, and whether it's good or it's bad, it's just like, I don't know. Or if it's too good, you don't trust it, because at least you knew it might have been toxic growing up, but at least everybody stayed, no one left you. And so you're like, this works, and it really doesn't. It's doing something else in you.
It makes me think of like how, people will talk about having like daddy issues or mommy issues. And like, we've almost normalized the fact that, a girl gets into a relationship and she's some type of way with the guy. And it's like, oh, well, my dad wasn't around. Oh, okay, well, that's it. But then we don't think about the safety in that space, right? Because the reality is the safety that would have been created by the parents being in the home and being able to model appropriate behaviors, being able to share affection and teach a child when it's appropriate and when it's not appropriate, so that they can have that ability to balance and realize what normal and healthy is, that was missing. So then they get older and they're like, well, yeah, the trauma of not having a good relationship with my mom or dad, or, not having a relationship with them at all, I don't feel safe. I never actually learned how to be in this type of relationship and have that back and forth and it be in a healthy way. And my system feel like it's okay. So I have to keep reacting with what I know, which is I'm going to act like nobody's here, because when I grew up, I didn't have that. My safety was created with that absence. And now you trying to fill this absence, and I don't know what to do with you because you a threat to my safety.
Right. Because you're doing all this random stuff. It's doing all these things like living.
It's like living and breathing. Do healthy stuff, and you're like, oh, you're a healthy person. But that's still threatening to me because I didn't have healthy growing up. So you're not safe. You're a threat to my safety.
Wow. It gets deep.
Yes. It's like, this is what we all deal with that we sometimes don't say out loud.
Exactly. And that is why this conversation is so important, because a lot of us have gotten used to looking like everything is together when it's not. And it's like there's those invisible, the things that we're not looking at, right? But at the end of the day, it's kind of like the invisible scars. And how do you go about that when it's like, when you have an actual wound that you can see, you're like, okay, ooh, this looks bad, let me do what I need to do, put some Neosporin or something to clean it up, and then the Neosporin on them and the healing stuff and the bandages, you're taking care of it. But when it's that invisible thing like trauma, or things that are just unresolved issues that just kind of started, different things kind of fed this little thing, you're not checking, on yourself, or no one else knows to check on you because you look fine, So speaking of that, talking about the physical. So for the most part, we can be narrow-minded on the topic of safety. I've heard people discuss different, topics on safety, and they tend to focus on more of the physical side of safety and neglect everything else. Everything else. But how important is it to explore the different types of safety as it pertains to child development?
Oh, yeah. So I think the first part would be people understanding that safety is required in all the different areas of life. Areas of life being when they talk about spiritual health, physical health, emotional health, financial health, all of these different aspects have a layer of safety that is required for you to be happy, healthy, and successful in each of them. Because, for example, if we are not financially healthy and we're constantly working job to job, living hand to mouth, there is a lack of safety that is present in that very space, that the trauma that produces in our system, it creates the anxiousness. It creates the being on edge. Sometimes it creates a depression, like you feel like you can never get out of the hole. So then you're stuck in that space. It shifts the mindset. Same thing with emotional health. If you find that you're constantly up and down in mood, or, you feel like you don't have that social emotional intelligence to be able to speak to, this is how I feel, this is what I need, and do it appropriately, there's a lack of safety that's present in that space as well. From I don't feel safe saying these things out loud, discussing it, owning it, sharing it with other people, receiving other people's emotions back, being able to read the room and all that kind of stuff that plays into it. But then how does that tie in with kids? Well, one, we have to remember that kids, because they are young and because they're children and their brain is not fully developed, they are impulsive. It's like, you spin the jack in the box and that bad boy jumps up. You never know when it's coming, but it never ceases to fail that it shocks us when it comes out, right? Their brain is that jack in the box flying up out, because you never know when it's going to do something to respond. And when we ask them to do something, they don't do it. It's like, what's up there? But I say that because children are impulsive. Their brain is still very much so developing. They have not lived enough years as adults have to be able to default back to, the conversation around, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is how I do it differently. They don't have that experience. So for a lot of them, they rely on the people in their environment to teach them. Right. This is where mom and dad modeling how to respond to situations comes in. This is where siblings, showing what affection and, disciplining looks like. This is where, when they go out into society and society tells them who they should be, comes into play. So safety for a child is not just determined by them, but it's actually determined by the people who control the environments that they're in.
And all that they're providing, more than the physical safety, because you do think about that. Of course, I can imagine. I don't have children. I'm an auntie, and I think about that. But I am very, I'm a mama bear without my physical children just yet. And you do think about, you're like, oh, watch out, don't hurt yourself, And I guess just like you said, their brain is like that jack in the box. And so they're just like, oh, I want to do that. Oh, I want to do this, and you're just like, I just want to make sure they don't hurt themselves or die, jump off something. Like, I just need you to be physically safe, because that is the immediate threat, right? That you're constantly thinking about when they're little, they're small. You have to watch them because they're going to do whatever they feel like doing. I was talking to my friend today, and she told her daughter, I think about 5 times the same thing. And she was just like, what about this? And she was like, I said, da, 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 da. No, it's this. And I'm just like, yeah.
This is what it looks like. I was going to say, because I mean, honestly, the sad part is, as a child and adolescent therapist, I don't think parents truly know how to provide safety in other spaces. Because you said something that was that like piqued my brain, but I was like, this is what most of us respond to. But did they die? But did they die? I got them to 18. They had clothes on their back. They had food in their stomach. I wiped my hands. I did what I was supposed to. But the reality is, all those other elements that require the parents to truly check in, to truly be present, sometimes it's those pieces that are missing that actually set the parameters of safety. And I think that's a good example with emotional safety. How many times has a parent sat with the child when they were crying, and it's not like, stop crying, you embarrassing me, or okay, baby, just tell me what you're feeling, and let's work it out. Like, how many of parents can actually say which method they use and they use the most? Because we know as adults, like, we get busy. Sometimes we don't have the time to sit through a child's tantrum, and it's like, shut up already, like, just get it together. You did wrong. You in timeout. But there's an emotional safety that's created when you can sit with the child, and it's like, well, I understand you're crying, and I'm going to give you the space to do that, but there are still rules you have to follow. And it's like setting parameters to help them understand that the emotion being experienced and expressed is not bad.
Right.
It's okay to feel. It's okay to express it. But you can't be out here hitting on folks and trying to kill folks and doing all the extra. There's
because you're mad.
Yeah, I'm mad, so I'm gonna hit you. What? I can't swing on you, man. Defect be knocking on my door. Like, no. So we teach our kids, like, this is how you set the parameters of safety. You don't negate what they're feeling. You don't downplay what the experience is, but you help them see what the bounce back looks like. So the bounce back looks like, I'm gonna sit here with you, and I know you're crying, and mommy would really like to walk away right now, but I love you. I'm gonna give you the space to do it. So now this child knows that they don't have to fear their emotions, and they feel safer, because the next time that emotion shows up, it's not going to feel too big for them. It's something that they can manage. They know that they're allowed to express and to feel. And when they go outside and they start having their own family, when they go to school and these teachers, are coming at them, or they coming at the teachers, it's going to look different because they know better. And that's just one element of that wheel. So if we set those same type of parameters in all the other spaces, the same way we set parameters with the physical, baby, don't touch that socket. Baby, that stove is too hot. Baby, you're going to fall and hit your head. I need you to sit down. We set those physical parameters to keep the children safe. We have to set the same parameters in the other spaces.
Yes, like the emotional, and because we'll talk about that too in another episode of the emotional maturity, right? And so when I was writing this book, I was looking up different types of safety, and of course, there's a long list, but the first thing that came up, because you're like, I would never even don't even think about all these areas of safety, right? But the first thing that came up, the first article that came up, I think it was for Cherished Wives or something like that. And they talked about the 3 elements of safety within a relationship. And it was emotional, and then physical, and then as well as relationship safety. And a lot of that has to do with, to me, I kind of think of like abandonment issues, how someone can have abandonment issues because that relationship safety, they talked about different examples of how people threaten you with hanging the relationship over your head. you know, so then they're able to manipulate you in different ways, or I'm going to leave if this or whatnot. So it's that relationship that you care so much, you know, about, but the manipulation that's happening, the threat, you know, surrounding, you know, that relationship. And I don't think about, you don't think about that, you know, and you also don't think about the biggest side, you know, that does get neglected is that emotional side, because you have one side that, and this actually kind of leads us into our next question, but we have one side that it's more acceptable for you to have and express your emotions, but you know, we're human, so we both, all of us have, you know, these emotions, but it's not, you know, accepted on the other side. And that, you know, can be, you know, an issue. But before we go into that question, some things that you were mentioning, it made me think about a friend of mine said, ask me, she kind of gave me like the scenario and asked me what it is that I would do. And she was talking about like, if you have a child and like they're sad or they got hurt, what would you do? Would you you know, what would you do? Like, would you try to make them stop crying? Would you tell them to just go do, you know, go do something, or just cut it out, and or make them laugh? Or would you basically show that empathy and soothe them? And I was telling her, I was just like, well, you know, that's where she was going with it. But I gave my response, which would be to soothe, you know, the child, be like, oh, you know, it hurts. Okay, well, we're gonna make it better, and you know, rub them and let them know like we're gonna get it all fixed up so that you're gonna feel, you know, back to new, you know, like yourself again. And so she was like, so you would be an attuned parent. Like, I guess they're the word is attunement, you know? And she was basically stating that there's some people who don't handle it that way. They're the ones that are like, okay, I'm gonna make you laugh, or you know, or stop crying, you know, or they get frustrated that you're crying, you know, and that they would not be attuned. And I was just like, oh wow. And it's so interesting because some things that I guess would be considered, you know, the correct way, to me, it seems natural, but apparently it is not, you know, natural. And so it makes so much sense to what we're talking about neglecting those other areas of safety, or yeah, safety and you know, for you to be safe in these different areas, and not realizing that if you're not safe in these other areas, it can eventually impact the area that we focus on about physical safety, because you kind of just don't know better in these other areas. It leaves you open and exposed to physical harm.
Yeah, it's true. I was going to say, like, building off the example you shared, I've definitely seen the instances where that could be the case. But then I also go out to people that like attunement is not just you're super dialed into their emotion and like you are, oh baby, come on, let's stop crying. Like you're, you know, you do the patting them type of thing. Sometimes attunement can also be, I'm acknowledging that you're crying and I'm sitting with you in this space, but I'm not gonna coddle you with it because I want you to know that I love you, but you're okay. I don't know if you've seen like the different studies that exist, or even like some of the videos that are out there where like a kid like falls down and, you know, scrapes their knee and they look at the parent. If you notice, like on the playground falls, and the first thing they do is make eye contact with the parent to see what the parent's gonna say or do. And when they see the parent being like, "Oh my gosh, okay, baby, are you okay?" Then they start crying. But then when they see the parent, the parent's like, "Okay, you're okay, buddy. Get on up. We're playing." Then the kid gets up and they actually don't start crying. So the irony is both of these parents attuned into the kid's needs. Like they tuned into what the child needed. They were connected and they were like, okay. But the difference was, did they regulate themselves and model for the child how to regulate?
Yeah, that's good.
Safety is not just I'm setting parameters. I'm modeling for you within this realm, within the parameters that are here, how you can respond. So when that falls and they look to their parents for, is this okay? Is this good? Is this bad? Am I safe? And the parent
that
responds back
assurance.
to them with the stability and that assurance, like, come on, baby, you're okay. It's just a boo-boo. We're going to keep playing.
Right.
And it's like, okay, boo-boo's not bad. I'm okay. I'm safe. But when you got the moments like, oh my gosh, my baby, she's dying. The kid starts wilding out, and you're like trying to soothe both parent and child.
Right.
You wonder
right. It's like, okay.
Has big responses and big reactions, and you look at the parent and you're like, yeah, it makes sense. You're the problem.
That's where they got it from. They're a little extra because mama was extra or daddy was extra in this area. So you already know like how they're going to respond. I mean, the kids pick it up. I seen a friend of mine's little cousin, and I seen him at 3, and 4 and 5. And by the age, I would say about 4, he had his daddy down. Okay. Like he had his daddy down. He moved like him. He scratched his head, lean. He would lean and scratch his head like his dad would do. And it was just so funny because some things I was just like, I didn't really notice it until I seen this child mimicking everything that you do. Like he has become a little you. It was just so funny. And I was just like, wow, it really gave perspective about when you have kids and do you want, your child, as far as in selecting a partner, do you want your child to be behaving and acting and mimicking this person? And if you don't, that might not be the right one.
When you lay down, just make sure you can tolerate what they do for the next 18 years. Because now you got 2 of it.
Now you got 2 of them. Exactly. Okay, so I wanted to, the question before kind of segue into this one, but wanted to talk about at times how, it seems that men and women do not have the same ideals about safety. Some can say that, women are more emotional. So as I was mentioning before, that is more accepted. And the expectation is that men are not. And so sometimes you'll see men who are emotional and they're being dragged or not treated properly because that is not something that we have accepted, in society. It's, at least in America that I know of, that's not something that is welcomed, right? And so with that, like on the women's side, I think that because we are and then men are not, it can cause, different issues in our adulthood. And I really believe that, of course, this kind of stems back to what have you been taught. And so I wanted to get your perspective on this. Do you believe that little girls are more protected than little boys?
So I wouldn't say, you know what it is? I think girls, it's normalized for girls to be in need, and it's normalized for guys to be the persons providing the protection for the need.
Right.
Because one of the things that we have to be really careful about is like, we talk about girls crying and we say, you're beautiful, you're this, you're that. We want you to express your emotions, and we accept it and we welcome it. But then when our boys fall down, when they cry, we tell them what? Stop crying. We tell them you're not supposed to do that. You're a big boy. Boys don't cry. Boys don't need help. So I say that because in society, we have trained our girls to be vulnerable, and we've trained our guys to be strong. But we haven't said that in the strength, the vulnerability is allowed. If it is showed, we classify it as weakness. So think of a man who's like, I don't feel 100% right now. I feel like I need some support. I need to not be the strong person. And they don't have that.
Right.
And they truly provide safety to you as the partner, as the woman. if they don't feel safe in their own system.
Right. Yeah. How can they do that? And exactly. That is my point.
You're like, so what does that mean? What does that look like?
Yeah, so it's definitely but you're touching on it. I'm gonna let you cook. That it's so important because you realize that you get that aha moment, like, wait, hold on, like, how are you supposed to provide that if that's not something that you were given? And it is on both sides, because it's almost like the thing that that is given, to boys, it's not given to young girls or whatever. Not that you have to raise boys and girls exactly the same, but I think that when it comes to values and in allowing your child to feel safe to express all of them, and sometimes we focus so much on like telling a child what to do, and we don't watch them enough, and kind of examine and see what they're doing, see what they're gravitating to. Even when it comes to gifts, sometimes you just gotta put your child around some things and see what it is they're gravitating to, so you can know what to nurture. Because as a parent, you're learning your child too. Like, they just got here, and
they're a stranger to you.
Exactly. And they're learning themselves and getting familiar with touch and seeing and all these different things, but there's something that's built into them, and that thing, you want to know what it is, right? So that you can help support them, because that is you bring them into the world, and then you support them to be a good version of their self, because obviously we want them to be good. But we're trying to support them in some kind of area. And so I think that we should be more balanced with that, so we can provide more balance to the child, so that they can be their whole selves. And I think that young girls, they are sheltered in certain ways and reassured in certain ways, but what about when they have ambition? What about when they're going to be a creator? Maybe they're not going to be a very docile woman, then if they are a certain way that society accepts, that's great. But if they're not, then they're being shamed, and it's kind of stunting their growth. They're not able to like flourish and thrive. And that's what, I was talking about as far as with the safety aspect. How can you thrive if you're not safe? And so same thing with boys, if they're not able to tap into, not necessarily that they have to cry, right? But that should be okay if it's necessary. If that's what they're going through, they might need to have that release, because some would say that crying is an emotional detox. And I could get with that. I feel it. But the other side is who else are they besides the person who is providing something, protection, or your needs, making sure that your needs are together. It's like, what about the in between that makes them a full person? Because I believe wholeheartedly, if we were both raised to be that full person, our 100% ourselves, we can both be better to one another, instead of, I feel like, a setup. It's what we see sometimes. It's like, you don't even know how to do this thing, but I'm supposed to come to you, and I don't know how to do this other thing that you feel like you need, because you won't open up and let me know, what's happening. And it's that way in the children. So
I think I see it like not fully differently, but a little, in that I think we're raised the same, but the parameters we set are what differs. Because, for example, the parameters around physical safety for girls is tighter. Like most parents are a lot stricter with their girls. Like, you can't just go to everybody's house. You can't, wear certain things. They don't want you around certain types of people. Like, they're more concerned about keeping you physically safe, because in their minds, girls can't defend themselves, right?
Right.
More freedom in the emotional space to express, because you're a woman. Girls cry. But then with boys, again, we're same households, brothers, sisters. Notice how brothers, sisters are raised the same, but then the parents treat them differently.
Treat them different. Brother can go to the sleepovers.
Yeah, you know, and it's
like, all night.
If you're going to something, your brother got to be there. But then even with the boys, it's like the boys may have tighter parameters as it relates to the emotional safety component, because a lot of times men, you know, they're telling them they can't cry, suck it up, you're a man, you got this. Mothers are like, okay, baby, like, you know, you can't be like this for too long. But then on the physical side, it's free reign. Boys will be jumping off of ceilings, you know, breaking, hitting heads on who knows what. We normalize that. But the reason I say that is I draw the attention to the parameters being different is because, and this may take us to a different place or slightly similar. A lot of people don't realize just how many boys are sexually abused as children.
Right. Exactly.
About safety, we normalize looking out for a girl's physical safety and giving them the emotional freedom to be. But then we let men and boys have freedom with the physical safety, but then dial it in on the emotional safety. And we don't always notice that sometimes the relationship that's built between an abuser and a victim involves that emotional connection. Because the grooming that happens, the piece that's oftentimes missing from parent and child is sometimes why groomers are able to move in the way they do to get access to a child, to set the stage for being able to offend against a child. It's similar to gang mentality. If you look at most people, when they've come out of gangs, you talk to them and you ask what got them in the first place. It was the piece about the family, the connection, like the having that unit that they felt like maybe they didn't have somewhere else. So that's a relational piece. That's an emotional connection that's required, even if it ain't said out loud. So we look at the importance of that type of safety, that type of dynamic. And with our kids, you know, like we said, our goal is just to keep them alive. So we don't always give the proper attention to the things that need it. And then we see issues that get swept under the rug. Like it's so much more talked about, you know, child female victims of sexual abuse. It's not as commonly talked about child male victims of sexual abuse. And I use that because not only is that a physical safety concern, it's an emotional safety concern. It's a relational safety concern. But it all started in the home when the parents had the children and they were building and modeling and teaching their children about what safety actually is. If you set the parameters, somebody gonna come in and set it. And we don't want to set the incorrect ones. And then we set our babies up for failure in the long run.
Exactly. No, that's so good. And it's so true what you're saying, because I didn't realize it either. But as a woman and dating, you know, being single, you come across different people, your friends, you know, or men that are interested in you. And as you communicate with each other, and, you know, I feel like I kind of have this gift where people really do tell me,
you might be a therapist.
Business. And I'm like, I want to know. Don't get me wrong. I really am looking to get it. But sometimes I'm shocked of what I hear. And it is because, you know, I was raised different. You know, like I talk about safety and in the areas, you know, I feel like I could have received a little bit more emotional support so that I can feel safer, you know, but I'm kind of one of those people, like, you don't give it to me, I'm gonna get it. But there's still something that there's still, you know, some areas that, you know, I have to look at and I have to heal and do more to get to a point where I feel comfortable with. But the physical safety I never had to concern myself with. And that is because even though we were young, we thought mama was paranoid and doing too much, but mama was keeping us safe. And, you know, that extraness kept us safe, that we didn't have that story. And some people that I've known, women and males, but the males having this conversation is the idea, their understanding of it. A lot of times like you said, we have a lot more focus on the young girls, but not with the boys. And so when they become men and you hear these stories about how they lost their virginity at 11 and 10 and like soon as they go through puberty, and it is to it's a woman, 17, 16, 17, 18 and 20 years old with a child, and they think that they have had this consensual experience where they got an older woman. They're like, oh yeah. I hear guys say, oh yeah, I've been dating an older woman forever. I lost my virginity to an older woman. How old, sir? And then you hear this, and it's just like their mindset about it, because we like you said, let the boys run free with the physical side of things, and we do not protect that or educate on that side of things. Just don't get nobody pregnant or behave, be appropriate. That might be the conversation, but we're not really doing the same as we are doing with young ladies. Then they have this idea that it was okay. And it's just like, you don't understand that you were actually abused and groomed. And that really, like, it just hurts, it hurts my soul. And I actually had said something about that in a post, because I had talked to some of my friends about it, and they were like, yeah, like I've dated so many guys who have been molested and didn't even know it, And so how does that work if you're supposed to be my head? Because everybody is going on like business is normal. And one day you're going to be a husband to someone. How is that woman going to be physically safe and emotionally safe and sexually safe with you when you have not received safety in those areas? That just doesn't make sense. You're preparing the women for all of this, but you're not necessarily preparing the men. So we get together. To me, it's like a guarantee.
That's what they end up in couples therapy.
Exactly. You guarantee to
it always comes out.
It's literally a miracle. And people don't realize how special and how sacred it is to have a healthy marriage and love life and family, because you had to do a lot to get there.
Just to help your relationship in general.
Yeah.
The society we live in today, relationships are so fickle. Between the way COVID reset a lot of us, and we were isolated for so long that now we all out here trying to make besties, and people don't know how to build those relationships anymore. It feels like, everybody was wiped clean,
Right.
So I say that because I think it's a mixture of knowing where you stand, knowing what's internally in you, and then understanding how that then is output into the world. Because like a man that has experienced these things, if they have not healed, it is 100% going to show up in their relationship. Same thing for women. Like if you were a girl that grew up and you did not have safety, you're out here making bad choices. And it's a pattern, because again, the brain does what it knows. And even if it means it's making bad choices, for it feels like it's keeping you alive. That's its primary goal. So I always tell people, you have to heal. And sometimes healing means you have to reset everything. Yeah, like this is the analogy that popped in my head. You have that black mama that's like, I'm gonna slap the life out of you, like
and taste out your mouth or something.
Yes, they slap you so hard you feel like your life just reset.
Like, okay,
all the senses that were not there comes back. So you're like, I'm never gonna, play crazy when that threat gets made again. But that's almost what like healing needs to do to the system. Because if you grow up in unsafe environments, and we're not even talking the traditional like environments, high poverty, high crime, know, domestic violence, and we're not even talking about the traditional things that everybody already knows. We're talking about the subtle things. Like your parents are not as attentive because they work so much. So now you're a high achieving family. And you feel like you're supposed to be a high achiever, but your parents weren't fully present because they were so busy trying to get that, dangling carrot to make it to the next level. You had a house, you had parents, you had resources, but you still were lacking in certain spaces and safety because it wasn't present.
Yeah, no, that's exactly, that's my story. And that's what I say, like about the book, really, because when I started, I was just like, okay, a friend of ours, friend of the family, who's like, family, and she stated that, okay, so who was the book for? You have to identify your audience. And at first I didn't really know. I was just like, I wanted to talk about, the areas that I didn't feel safe in, and empower people to be vulnerable, at least with themselves, and find, a safe place. Right. But as I kept writing and had experiences and learning, I realized, like, yeah, this is for the strong person. They say check on your strong friend. It's for them, because it's very easy for them to be overlooked. It's very easy for the child that is the good child. You would say, everyone say, oh, that's a good, she's so good. And then you don't feel like you need to do anything sometimes for them, or do as much, because they're good, they responsible, they're not getting in any trouble. You're proud of them, and you're like, okay, well, let me focus over here on these other ones. And that child ends up missing out, and then there's those holes, like you said before, and that leaves an opening for someone, a predator, or just maybe just someone who is toxic to gain access to them. Yeah. So, but yeah, I wanted to go into the next question. I think this is our last question, and that is, what are some things that parents or parental figures, because you don't have to just be a parent, but people who have access to children, intimate access, I would say, like teachers and, child care providers, parents and grandparents, aunts and uncles. But what are some things that you would tell these parental figures, or advice when it comes to creating an environment that their child can be healthy, happy, and grow up to be thriving adults? What are just some tips, some things that you feel like are maybe most important tips?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think the biggest thing I tell a lot of my parents is attention is key. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean attention like how you get like that boss that micromanages and they're like, you're doing this, and you got to clock in and clock out at this time. Like, not that kind of attention.
We don't want that.
The attention that's like, yeah, we don't want those kind of parents. But the attention that's like, you know what, I'm not going to be my child's best friend, but I'm going to be present. Mm-hmm. Like, mm-hmm. Yeah, I had a long day at work. It would be real easy for me to, tell them I'll talk to you before you go to sleep. And I got all this stuff I got to do to get you ready for bed. And then next thing you know, they fall asleep. You never got a chance to chat. Mm-hmm. I think we sleep on just how powerful of a connection, of an attachment that is created when you as a parent can just pause for a second and actually make sure that your child, who is a fellow human being, mm-hmm. actually feels seen and heard.
Yes, that's so good.
So I always say to folks, before you try to do all these other tips and resources, what's your relationship even look like with your child?
Start there.
You can build up your toolbox and then try to use these tools, and they're looking at you like, well, we don't talk no way, so I don't even know why you miss my direction. Or they're 5 and they don't actually know you because you've been at work for most of their life, and now you're trying to get in there, and they're like, you're a stranger to me. I don't want you. I think the presence is the first step. Making sure that when your child gets home, they know that they have your undivided attention, even if you have no time to give. Find it, give it, because that sets the parameters. And that's you modeling for them how to respond, how to receive, how to execute and give out so that it's a healthy example. Then the other piece, tool-wise, that I would say is just strengthening that. How do I put it? Strengthening the toolbox, looking like traditional parenting skills. So, setting routines, doing some of the check-ins, being intentional with the time. So, like, if you know that weekdays tend to be hectic, being intentional about setting time aside on the weekend so that you guys are having family time. Relying on your own resources as a parent. I know we talk about self-care sometimes when we, are talking to adults, like, don't forget self-care when you're working 80 hours a week. It's like,
you can do that.
Knowing what that looks like and modeling that, and even teaching your kids how to do self-care. I have never once heard someone say that children need self-care too.
Oh,
it is something that I teach my parents, but it's like, you can model what self-care looks like and bring your kid into it. Now, if they're doing too much, let them know you can't come into my space because this is my time. But if you teach them how to be in that space with you, you're modeling in a healthy way boundaries. You're modeling in a healthy way how to set expectations and receive when they come back. You're setting the parameters. So if parents learn how to set the parameters, not as a way to choke their children and it be restrictive, but as a way to groom their children to be healthier, happier, live the life that they genuinely want their children to live, they're going to see their children thrive. So safety is ultimately going to be created by just being and doing the things that you know you want your children to have.
That's so good. Oh, I loved it. Lisa, you're so awesome. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for being here. I know that the audience is really going to benefit, from everything that you shared, your gems, your little nuggets that we all need just to hear it. You don't really hear about this, that often, unless I guess you're being very intentional to just focus on parenting podcasts. I don't know, but we like to mix it up and have a little variety. And so I'm so excited. I really think this is an amazing episode. And I wanted to give you an opportunity before we close out to share with our audience your handles and your, what platforms are you on and your website, things like that.
Yeah, so feel free to look us up. Our website is www.thecomfyplacellc.com. It's lovely, it's colorful. So shoot us a message if you have questions. And like I said, even if we don't have the answers, we're happy to help you find them. And then on Instagram and TikTok, we are So Comfy Therapy. And on Facebook, we are The Comfy Place. And then if you are on LinkedIn and you're wanting to connect on the business side, feel free to look me up with my name, Lisa Ibekwe. I'm on there. So thank you guys for listening. And I look forward to connecting with you all, in the real time in the future.
Yes, I love it. I love it. Well, thank you again for being here. And to my beautiful audience, I appreciate you. I love you so much. And I'm so happy to be back. And thank you for holding it down and constantly saying, hey, when's the next, season? When's the next show? I am here now. And we are getting it rolling between, till the end of the year and probably into Valentine's Day, February, March. So we will see you all next time. Good night.
Bye, everybody.